Hi, my name is Ken Getz. I'm a senior consultant with MCW Technologies. In this presentation, you'll learn to run other applications from within Access 2007. Actually, that's pretty easy. There's a shell command that lets you run other applications. The problem is when you want to run another application and stop and wait for that application to be done before going on with your work in VBA code. That's what we'll focus on in this demonstration. I've loaded the sample database runappandwait.actdb into Access 2007 and loaded the sample form. Here we see three buttons that allow us to test out various ways to run an application. There are two buttons that will run checkdisk, and because I'm going to redirect the output of checkdisk into a text file, it requires a little bit of special handling, as you'll see when we look at the code. There's also a button to run Notepad and wait for it to complete. Now, although the point of this exercise is to run an application and wait for it to return back, there is a button to run checkdisk and not wait for the results. When I click this button, it's going to run checkdisk, send the output from checkdisk into a text file, and then display the text file on this form. The problem is, unless I wait for checkdisk to complete, we won't see anything in the text file. Let me show you. I click the button. There's the text file, nothing in it. Checkdisk is happily running right now in the background, but I've already finished the code in my procedure and I've loaded the text file into this text box without waiting for checkdisk to complete. By now, checkdisk is most likely finished and I can run Notepad and wait for the results. Now here, if I run Notepad, it brings up the results of my running checkdisk, which I've written to a text file, in Notepad. If I come here and make a change, there we go. Let's save this and close Notepad. Watch what happens. Right now, there's nothing in the text box on the form. Once I close this, the text appears, including my edits here to the text file. Let's try it once again. Let me close the form, open it back up, and now I'll run checkdisk and wait. This time, the form waits. Its code is blocked. I can still interact with my form, but it doesn't run any more VBA code until checkdisk is complete. And once checkdisk is complete, it displays the text file within this form. Well, let's look at how this is all happening. This module contains all the code you need. Here you'll find within the module declarations for two Windows API functions. We'll need both of those to accomplish our goals. Now in this module, you'll find a simple procedure called runapp. This one doesn't stop to wait for the application to complete. It's just here as a parallel for the runapp_wait procedure, which really does the work we care about. Runapp just calls the shell command built into VBA, given a command to execute and a window mode to execute in. Down here, we have the real procedure we care about. Runapp_wait starts by declaring a few constants that we'll need for the API calls. We have a variable that will hold the instance handle for the running application. We have a variable that will hold the process handle and an exit code for the process. To get started, we use the shell command just like before, except this time we look at its return value, which is an instance handle for the running application. Given that instance handle, we can call the openProcess API function. This openProcess API function returns a process handle for the running process. And here's where the good stuff happens. We have a loop which says we want to do the stuff inside this loop, which is we call the getExitCodeProcess API function given our process handle and an exit code passed by reference, which Windows fills in with the current exit code. We loop until the exit code is not equal to still active, which is defined up here. And once that happens, we know that the process has completed. Now, if you didn't relinquish some time for Access's user interface to still react to mouse clicks and mouse moves and keystrokes, Access would be effectively dead while we were running this process. So here we have a call to do events, which gives Access time to keep up with mouse moves, mouse clicks, keyboard action, and so on. Without that, Access would really just go gray and not be able to react to any input. If you don't believe me, comment that out and give it a try. With that in there, we can interact with Access while we loop, waiting for the process to complete. There's some error handling here to handle the case where, oh, the command can't be executed or whatever happens, but in general, this loop and these two method calls are the important part of this process. Well, how do we call this code? Let's look in the Forms class. Here, we have the code that calls Notepad, for example. This says let's call run app wait, passing in the command, which is notepad.exe, a space, then the file we want to edit, which is defined up here. Here, we have the code to call file read, which loads up the file name into this text box on the form once we're done. Notice this call to run app wait has a number following it which indicates the window mode. 1 indicates we want to run with normal focus. And actually there's a constant for this, which is VB normal. There it is, VB normal focus. And that's one of the constants we can use when calling run app wait. We can pass in VB hide, which is the same as 0, VB normal focus, VB minimized focus, and there's about 6 of these constants. Look at the documentation for the shell method to see how to call that run app wait method, which takes the same parameters as the shell method. Down here, when we're going to call check disk and wait, in this case, I've set up a template for our command, which is defined here. cmd/c is required because CMD is our command processor. The /c says run the command and quit. cmd/c allows us to run check disk of the C drive and redirect the output using the greater than sign into a file I'll specify in my code, replacing this token with the file name. Well, down here you see how it works. I declare command as a string, and I call the replace method, replacing in that command template, looking for the curly brace 0 and replacing it with a file name. That allows me to separate the command template from the file name, so if you want to modify the file name, you only have to modify it in this one place. It's just a way to keep those 2 bits of data separate. Down here, we call run app wait, passing in the command and how we want it to appear on screen. This time we're using VB hide so we don't actually see the window. If you want to see the window, change that to VB normal focus and you'll see the check disk window run. When we're done and we wait for this line of code to complete before moving on to the next line of code, we call the file read procedure given the file name and the text box to read it into. And file read is defined down here. It's just a simple procedure which takes in a file name and a control to write the output into, and it loops through the text file one line at a time and dumps the output into the control. So you've seen now how to run an application, wait for it to complete, and then follow on with more code afterwards. If you want to have this same behavior in your own applications, import this module into your application and call the run app wait procedure, passing a command to execute and a window mode to run in.